Hi, my name is Ethan Ziegenfuss, and I am doing the Gerstmann-Straussler-Scheinker disease, otherwise known as GSS. This first picture that I provided is actually a CAT scan of an infected individual who is showing the brain degeneration of this disease. So as you can see in the diagram of E and F, you can actually see the degeneration of the brain around the sides of that there. The general information about GSS is it is a prion-based disease. Prion diseases are a group of conditions that affect the nervous system. Um, Prions are essentially misfolded proteins which characterize several fatal neurodegenerative diseases in humans and many other animals. It is not known what causes the normal protein to misfold. The abnormal three-dimensional structure is suspected of conferring infectious properties. The word prion actually derives from proteinaceous infectious particle. So with that definition, you can kind of understand how rare and how damaging this disease actually is. But one of the most interesting things I think I found about this disease is the fact that it is extremely rare, with 1 to 10 cases per 100 million in a population per year. Um, so, I mean, it's extremely rare with very limited cases. GSS is actually a progressive degeneration of the cerebellum. And then the signs and symptoms of this disease become visible around 35 to 50 years of age, although it is transmitted through inheritance, so these individuals have been infected since birth. But then most people, once their symptoms become visible, they live for approximately 60 months and then pass away. The disease is actually caused by a mutation in the PNRP gene. Although the exact function of the protein isn't known, it appears to play an important role in the human brain and other tissues throughout the body. People affected by GSS generally have mutations in the PNRP gene that result in the production of an abnormally shaped prion protein. The abnormal protein builds up in the brain, forming clumps that damage or destroy neurons. And then the distribution of this disease isn't held to any specific area. Like I said, it's inherited, so therefore the cases can pop up anywhere throughout the world. It isn't held like to a specific area in the United States or anything like that. But then this photo actually in the top right corner, these are actually Gerstmann, Straussler, and Scheinker, the three people who discovered the disease. So I thought that was pretty interesting to see the faces behind this disease. The symptoms of this disease, it is progressive ataxia, including clumsiness, unsteadiness, and difficulty walking. Cognitive dysfunction leading to bradyphrenia and dementia of a different degree. Dysarthria, which is slurred speech. Nystagmus, which is abnormal eye movements. Spasticity, which is your rigid muscle tone. Visual disturbances, which sometimes leading to blindness. A lack of coordination in swallowing. Deafness, and then your Parkinsonian features, which are only present in some families. Parkinsonian features is actually essentially the symptoms of Parkinson's, but still labeled under the GSS disease. Now, GSS is a prion, therefore it doesn't have a life cycle. It has a prion replication of how it is going to replicate. This specific model is assumed that a single PRPSC molecule is going to bind to another single PRPC molecule and catalyzes its conversion into PRPSC. The two PRPSC molecules then come apart and go on to convert more PRPC. So it's basically your pretty basic infected protein is going to find a good protein. They're going to come together, and then it's going to make both those proteins become infected. And then they will split off and then find new PRPC or the good proteins to continue to make into bad proteins. But one of the ways that researchers are trying to battle this disease is they're trying to find a way to cap the PRPSC molecules, the proteins essentially, to make it so they can't replicate anymore. And that way, The disease never gets to the point where you begin to see symptoms. You stay in the fact of you're still infected, but you don't see any symptoms or end up it becoming fatal towards the end. Now, the transmission of GSS is inherited in an autosomal dominant manner, which that essentially means that every cell of the body has two copies of a gene. But in autosomal dominant disorders to be affected, a person needs to change in only one copy of the responsible gene in each cell. So if you get one gene in the respective cell in you are infected. So it's pretty hard to get it essentially because it's only one thing. But it's kind of crazy to think that one mutation in a gene can actually give you this disease that is extremely rare. Like I said, this disease is only inherited, so the only way you're going to transmit this disease is through family members and through your inheritance. But one thing about this disease is, despite how far elapsed you are from the last case of GSS, there's always a 50% chance that you're going to pass it to a child in each pregnancy. So I thought that was a pretty crazy fact that despite how far away you could be from it, there's still always that chance that your child could end up having this disease. The adaptations of a prion disease, like GSS, is that although they lack DNA and RNA, they behave much like viruses, producing distinct self-perpetuating structural mutations that provide a clear evolutionary advantage. When a particular prion strain is transferred from brain cells to a different cell line, its properties gradually change, giving rise to a variant strain that's better adapted to this new cellular environment. And then actually with the Scripps Research Institute, they proved this by taking prions from the brain cell, from a brain cell line. They sent it to a new cell line and it ended up adapting to those new host cells. But then if it actually returned to the brain, the prions gradually regained their original properties. So they found actual physical evidence that at least in one case, the fold of the prion changed when its properties changed. So I thought it was pretty crazy that I was able to mutate by the changing the folds in the prion. And then each different fold creates a different strain. So to think that some three-dimensional figure can actually change so much, but also so quickly, and then not have a very long time for an evolutionary change to be able to basically mutate as soon as you're brought into a new environment is a pretty crazy aspect of this disease. And then it's also has the ability to become drug resistant. So although GSS has no cure at the moment, there's always that fear that if they did find a cure, that the people could eventually become, the disease could eventually become drug resistant in those individuals, and then they're back to square one trying to find another way to get this disease to stop becoming so prominent. The cutting edge article that I found was the Gerstmann-Straussler-Scheinker disease subtypes efficiently transmit in bank foals as a genuine prion disease. Excuse me. GSS is a transmittable disease with the P102L, A117V, and F198S mutations, transmitting efficiently and produce distinct pathological phenotypes in bank foals. So this was a pretty crazy article that I found because one of the big points of GSS was that it's only transmitted inheritedly. But with this actual research, they were able to transmit it into a small rodent, which seems like a bad thing that they were able to transmit a disease that was only able to be inherited into an actual transmittable disease. But it actually makes the disease categorized as a prion disease, transmittably, and then in the strain variation. But hopefully with the able to transmit it into different organisms, you are able to find an organism who is resistant to this disease. And then being able to study their proteins, you could essentially cure humans of this disease. So by injecting it into different organisms, you could actually end up curing the disease of your own, which is a pretty crazy thing to think about. That some other organism might be out there that's completely immune to GSS, and we have no idea about it. But as soon as we inject it and nothing happens to it, we could essentially cure this disease, and we could save the few lives that this really screws up. And that is it for me with GSS. I hope you enjoyed this presentation, and thank you.